Okay, I think we're live now. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this next iteration of the developer discussion live stream. Okay, I think we're live now. Let me mute the stream here. Okay, so hey everybody, again, this is Rich Heilman, developer advocate, SAP Devs. And we're doing another developer live stream. In this case, we're focusing on Steampunk and Embedded Steampunk. We're going to find out much more about what all that means. And today I'm joined by Harald Kuck and Boris Gebhardt. Hi guys, how you doing?
Fine, thanks.
Thanks.
So we'll do a round of introductions real quick. I'm not sure that these guys really need an introduction, but for those that are new to the topic, perhaps you don't know these guys, but Harald, go ahead and tell us who you are, what you do.
Okay, I'm head of the ABAP platform. I've been around at SAP for a long time. I joined in 1989, worked as a developer, so I would say I have a technical background. Unfortunately, most people don't know that. Not in ABAP. I wrote 2 ABAP transactions during my SAP life, small ones. But apart from that, I've been working in the kernel that is developed in C. So if people think that I'm Mr. ABAP, that's not true. It's probably rather Boris. Boris, over to you.
Yes, thanks. Boris Gebhardt, Chief Product Owner of the ABAP platform. So I'm responsible about the new developments we are doing in the ABAP platform. You all know that. So the application server down from the memory management and all the work process and task handler and all that stuff to the programming language ABAP, programming models, reuse services, and so on, everything which we have in our ABAP platform as the basis of the big SAP applications like S4. And currently we are heading or pushing to get all the stuff which we have, all the assets to the cloud. And I think that's the perfect, more or less, next step that we now speak about Steampunk, which is one of the main pillars which we have to bring our ABAP assets to the cloud.
Right, great. So to the viewers, as you can tell, we have the right people in the call to discuss this stuff today. Long-time ABAP guys, even though Harald says he's not ABAP, I mean, he's one of the gatekeepers of the kernel, so come on, right? So if you have the questions, make sure that you put them in the chat. I will do my best to try to get them answered during the session here. Usually the chat is pretty fast and furious, so it might be a little difficult, but yeah, let's just jump into the discussion then. So Harald, your recent blog post. Normally you do this update on a yearly basis. So what happened in the past year for all the new guys out there around Steampunk? Perhaps give us a summarize what happened around Steampunk in the past year.
Okay, first of all, I mean, to be honest, up until last week, I think this was, I've written 2 blog posts in my entire life, so there is no general rule that there will be one each year. Actually, there was the plan to write one last year. I think it was, why didn't we do it? I mean, one reason was COVID, of course. We were under high pressure there, lots of stuff to do. Then we already came up with this embedded steampunk idea that we will talk about later. But it was not ready yet, really. And yeah, actually, if you give me an excuse not to write a blog, it's not that I love doing these things, then I will be happy to take it. And this was probably the reason why there was no one last year. But I'm happy that this year's blog post, yeah, got so much positive feedback. So thanks for all of you who answered to that and everything. And regarding your question, what Steampunk is all about, I mean, I know it's a complicated story, as always, in the ABAP universe, but we have lots of legacy out there, so that's probably the main reason. We started with Steampunk to just offer an environment to build and run ABAP applications, services, or extensions in the cloud. And within the cloud, we mean SAP runs and operates the platform. All the stakeholders on top of our platform, they receive updates and new features automatically without breaking anything, or without SAP breaking anything by delivering a new version of the platform. That's the main thing. And the story evolves over time. So at the beginning, we started with the platform as a service thing for ABAP-minded customers and partners. And of course, it's a good thing for them to be able to at least save some of their know-how or even code assets and move it to the cloud. Because of course, most of our customers, or almost all of them, are still sitting on-prem.
Right. So with your latest blog post, use in the title, we use the phrase "all in." That sounds pretty intense, right? So what do we mean by going all in with Steampunk?
Okay, all in. With all in, I meant we have these different stacks. So we have the S/4HANA cloud stack there, and we have the business technology platform with the Java and Node.js universe. And this is where we added ABAP as the environment to build extensions or solutions or services if you're ABAP minded. And the plan from the beginning was to sort of let new innovations mature in the BTP ABAP universe and then move them over to S/4HANA Cloud, for example. And in S/4HANA Cloud, we did have the possibility to extend our SAP solutions, but only with the so-called key user extensibility. And that cannot be compared to what we had in the past, and it was not for developers. So in the end, we thought we have one code base for the different S/4HANA stacks and for the business technology platform, at least for the ABAP environment anyway. So we thought we just take what we've built in the business technology platform, the Steampunk development model, and transfer that to the S/4HANA Cloud world, because then developers can write extensions that will definitely survive upgrades, and they are able to then write or to use local APIs or to write extensions that run within the same database logical unit of work, like I mentioned in the blog post. There is no data transfer involved, so we thought that was a good idea. And after that, we thought, okay, but even on-prem or in the private cloud, where customers are still allowed to call any SAP object, there is no stable public API, or to even modify SAP code, it would really help if we offer as an additional option this Steampunk development model there, because then customers can, over time, make the so-called business core, the digital core, cleaner and cleaner, meaning move to a state where there are no upgrade hiccups anymore. While explaining, I see already that all this sounds really complicated, but read our blog post if you want to know the details. Sorry.
Yeah, and that blog post is linked to in the in this live stream post on YouTube as well. So check out that blog post if you need more information there. So Steampunk has been available since around 2018, so perhaps 3 years old now. So what's happened with Steampunk in the last 3 years or so?
Perhaps I step in here. Perhaps I step in here, if that's okay. So I would say concerning the platform parts, so developing an ABAP application on top of Steampunk, including the APIs, we really matured. So if you take the ABAP RESTful programming model, that's now really mass ready, meaning you can really build your applications with that programming model. Invested heavily in the technical services, already from the ABAP platform for printing, for communication, for all that stuff. all that has been now cloud enabled and provided as public APIs that you can use them in your extensions. So I would say to build an application now on Steampunk, that is really now a mature environment. We have some missing parts like in the area of eventing or data archiving and so on. But I think so that you really can build your use case, I think that is okay. Concerning consumption, so who is really using Steampunk, the sweet spot is clearly ABAP-minded customers, partners, or even SAP departments. So normally they have a history in ABAP, they have knowledge in ABAP, and they have ABAP assets which they want to transform to the cloud. And what we see is that especially as for HANA customers who want to follow a clean core principle and want to get rid of this classic custom ABAP code, those customers are really interested in Steampunk, and we already see now big extensions of those customers on Steampunk. So they really decouple that from their S/4HANA on-premise. If it's a lightly coupled extension, and this is now running on Steampunk. Or we see partner solutions, especially partner solutions which formerly were more or less resident on NetWeaver, standalone as an example. They now see Steampunk as a future-proof platform for their solutions. Again, an ABAP platform technology stack now in the cloud. And last but not least, we have SAP applications. It's more or less the same story. They have on-premise solutions, add-ons, and so on, and now they want to transform this to the cloud. And we have now already big applications running on Steampunk from SAP itself. So it's really a mixture of partners, customers, and SAP applications. And we are now getting more and more pressure seeing these applications that we more or less improve concerning our data center coverage, which hyperscalers are supported. Currently, we have only AWS. We need Azure as an example. Scaling, better SLAs. So if you have enterprise ready and critical applications on your stack, then you get these questions. So a lot to do, but a lot has to be achieved as well.
Mm-hmm. Great. So, so that was Steampunk. So half of the blog post talks about this embedded Steampunk. So what is that all about? And you use the word embedded. Where is this embedded? Is it just a word to symbolize what you've done technologically, or what is this embedded Steampunk all about?
The first questions we received from customers about embedded Steampunk was if it has been embedded in the price list of SAP. So. No, embedding really means we have with Steampunk for the first time an ABAP development model, a custom ABAP development model, which is upgrade stable and cloud ready. And we now reuse exactly that custom development model inside of S/4HANA. We embed this custom development model in S/4HANA, allowing you to build custom code directly on S/4HANA, but not the classic way with modifications, use whatever SAP object is around and all that stuff. But now you do it exactly like we do it in Steampunk. So you only can use public APIs, you use ABAP development tools, you build web applications, and so on and so on. So we embed really the proven development model which we have in Steampunk now in S/4HANA, allowing you to build you tightly coupled extensions, which you can't do side by side because you want to extend a process, you want to add perhaps a body implementation, or perhaps you sit on top of data which you don't want to replicate. You just want to do a select on the data without remote APIs and all that stuff. That's now possible with embedded Steampunk.
But in the end, you're right. I mean, we sort of embed the technology from the business technology platform that we have there, the ABAP environment, and the offerings we have for developers into the S4 stack in the cloud and on-prem. So basically, we're talking about 4 different stacks, I think. We have to start with on-premise. We have the S4 on-prem stack. We have the private cloud offering that we now have for S4. We have S4 in the cloud, and we have the business technology platform. And in all of them, and this is the the all-in PUN. In all of them, we now offer the same development model, and partners or anybody writing code for each of these stacks is then able to reuse the assets in all of them, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, when I first heard the term embedded steampunk, I asked myself, well, what does that mean? Does that mean that it's a separate system that's embedded inside a system so that you still have the separation? So there was one question in here in the chat that we can touch on real quick. Now, where is it? So because it's the same system, right? So when connecting via ABAP development tools, do we connect separately to the core and separately to the embedded steampunk, or is it the same SID, or what?
So you really access with ABAP development tools the S/4HANA cloud system. You run on the same database and you use the same application servers, let's say it like that, as the actual S4 application. And you build then set code on top of the application using the same resources, not a parallel or a side-by-side stack. That means in your set code in Embedded Steampunk, you can really execute a select on the application tables.
And if you're using
access the same table, the same
if you're
database.
using ADT, so the ABAP design time, ABAP in Eclipse, which I am not doing, as I said up front, but then you can connect to your system on BTP, or to your S4 HANA cloud system, or to your on-prem system, or to your private cloud system. So in the end, you can have in one Eclipse, can have connections to the 4 different stacks that we have there.
But which the question is absolutely important, because that's the main issue we always have when we describe it. Embedded Steampunk really means it's in the stack. It's not a separated system. It's really in the stack, as you did it on premise with your custom code. So you really do select, you can implement a body from the sales and distribution area whatsoever. So that's really running in the same application stack as the S4 application, but, and that's the big but, you are separated via public APIs from the application. And for example, you can't modify the SD module pools of SAP to fill user access. You have to use bodies to do that. And that's why it's upgrade stable. And with our cloud-ready ABAP language version, which we use, all harmful statements which may harm your operation and so on can't be used. So it's really the Steampunk development model plus the local APIs of our S4HANA colleagues. That's the difference to which we have to Steampunk on BTP, where you have to call remote APIs. In the Embedded Steampunk, you use the local APIs of the S4HANA colleagues, a local CDS view for selecting materials, an API to create a sales order, not a remote API, a local API.
And since you asked regarding this Steampunk name, I mean, officially on Business Technology Platform, it's SAP Business Technology Platform, ABAP environment. But if you want to explain all this complicated stuff using this term all the time, then you are getting completely crazy. So we thought we needed a good name, and I quickly looked it up in Wikipedia. So Steampunk is a subgenre of science fiction that incorporates retro-futuristic technology and aesthetics inspired by 19th century industrial steam-powered machinery. We thought that was funny. So that was the internal name, and then at some point in time it leaked, and now it's Steampunk.
I like the name. I think it's cool. I'm into that kind of style anyway, so it's neat. One other question that's around upgrades is Embedded Steampunk on an on-premise S4 evergreen like BTP ABAP environment. Basically asking, is it upgraded automatically every quarter?
In on-premise?
Yeah, Embedded Steampunk in an on-premise S4.
No, so the SAP is responsible for the ABAP platform as a service offering on BTP, so the Steampunk. That's our task to update the platforms. It's a platform as a service offering. If you have an on-premise system, then of course the customer is normally doing the upgrades of the S4 system. So it's normally in the hands of the customer if it's an on-premise system. What happens is if the upgrade is happening and the customer is doing the upgrade, getting to a new version of S4HANA, then when Embedded Steampunk is used, then there are not so many hiccups with all the extensions, because you don't have to handle, this SPAU, SPDD, and all this stuff to handle modifications and all that, because you developed against public interfaces. So the effort to test and adapt the extensions is massively reduced if you use the Embedded Steampunk model. That's the idea. But of course, in on-premise, is you more or less the customer is doing the upgrade and is responsible for the upgrades.
So in on-prem, you will have two different types of code, sort of extension code. So it will be the classic extension code, and you can use that as before. So we're not taking anything away. And you have the possibility to switch this compiler switch on that I talked about in the blog post. And then it is checked whether you are only using these public API artifacts or whether you are cloud ready. And if you do that, we expect that for those components where you switch this compiler switch on, there are no hiccups at all, because there is this public API, and you can exchange the ABAP platform without the stuff on top knowing anything. Just like on I don't want to do commercials for Apple, but on iOS updates.
But perhaps to make this very clear, Embedded Steampunk will be first introduced in S4HANA Cloud with an early adopter program. That's the starting point, more or less. Then we want to provide it in the other S4 editions as well, including on-premise. In the other editions, it's not mandatory. So it's an option in on-premise. You can go on with your classic custom ABAP code, or you more or less say for that new development project, I want to use this strict mode, this Embedded Steampunk mode. And as Harald explained, you can more or less specify on set program object level. So for that set class, you can specify, I want to go for a strict check. I want to go for cloud ready ABAP for that set program as an example. So that allows you to step by step get more and more into this Embedded Steampunk world, because it's absolutely clear we will see for a very long time a mixture of classic custom code and all the extensions you have already and so on, and the cleaner Embedded Steampunk world. And additionally, at the beginning, public APIs will be missing. That's why you can't follow the track completely and so on and so on. Therefore, there will be a mixture for a long time. There's no doubt about that. And that's why we invest currently in guidelines how these two worlds can be managed in an on-premise system. So that on the one hand, you have your classic custom code and the first customer projects run with the cleaner core mode, and how this works combined. Otherwise, it's not usable. We need that guidance for customers.
And by the way, if I may add that, the task is not done if we just move the Steampunk technology and embed it into S4, because on the BTP side, we only have the sort of technical offering of the ABAP platform, and the public API that we talk about there. This is the stuff that I try to draw in this blog post with these little sketches. There we just have the public API for the technical stuff. And if we run directly within the S4 stack and we can call local APIs, as Boris said, then of course it would make sense to offer a public business and S4 business API in the different S4 flavors. And this is what is currently being built. And this is what, as Boris said, is now developed first in the cloud, in S4HANA Cloud, and then it will move to the private cloud and on-prem.
Perhaps we make this even more tangible. If you would try to use Embedded Steampunk now in on-premise, you would see just syntax errors because no APIs are available, and you would switch on the strict cloud check, and then you will try to call an old function module, and you will get an error, but you can't use the correct API because it's not yet available. Therefore, we explained, okay, first we need a bunch of APIs, first coverage of the main S4 applications concerning APIs and bodies. And then it makes sense to start on-premise with APIs. The general idea is these APIs are built in S/4HANA Cloud and will cover only the S/4HANA Cloud scope. And then with the on-premise releases, these APIs reach the on-premise world as well with the next on-premise release. But keep in mind, we will not cover on-premise only scope. So only the S/4HANA Cloud scope concerning the central elements like finance, procure, produce, sales, all these modules will be covered, but not modules which are only available on-premise. For this, we do not plan to provide public APIs.
So for the folks in the chat, I'm not ignoring your questions. I just feel that some of these questions are probably going to be answered as we get to our other questions here in a couple of minutes. So not ignoring you, but a couple of the questions that came in here late around. Here's one that's around what a public API is. So what do you mean by public API? What does that mean in this context of an embedded steampunk?
So in embedded steampunk, do you want to start?
No.
So embedded steampunk, first of all, we have the technical APIs from the ABAP platform. So normally we have here ABAP classes for factory calendar handling, scheduling a job or something like that. That's the first part of the public interface. Our technical ABAP platform class, which we release. So it's an explicit release process for an ABAP API, and we explain, okay, we will keep this API stable. That's our public interface of the ABAP platform, containing ABAP classes, CDS views, something like that. On the other hand, we have the business APIs from S/4HANA. That means, for example, finance or procure decides for embedded steampunk, we release these CDS views. Again, it's an explicit tag on the object that this object is released, okay? And then they explain, okay, I have, for example, a CDS view iProduct, which accesses the table Mara, which we all know, where all the products and materials are in, which is sitting on top of this table. And this object I now release, and then it's available in Embedded Steampunk, and you can run a select on the CDS view. Or they release an API to create sales orders. Normally we use for that web facades, not the old bar piece are used to, or not those are released, but more or less a wrapper around this functionality is provided, and then this functionality is released. So for the first time, more or less, you have now dedicated libraries, let's say it like that, and we more or less have a contract that this is our public API for produce, for procure, for finance, for read access, for create, update, delete of purchase orders or whatsoever. And those can then be used in Embedded Steampunk in your custom code. Or another part are bodies. So you're no longer allowed to do modifications in Embedded Steampunk. That's why you need, of course, extension points in the code of SAP, which are bodies. And therefore, the S4 colleagues especially release bodies in their code, and those can then be implemented using the standard body technology. So
it's just one, I don't know about our audience, whether they're all ABAP geeks, but I mean, a public API to me is just an API that stays stable. There's a promise that we won't change it in future, and there's a deprecation concept and so on. And of course, I don't know whether all people know that, but when we started a long time ago in the ABAP world, things were moving so fast and we were so successful so fast that we didn't manage to create these public APIs. I remember that I was an advocate for that a long, long time ago, but yeah, I didn't succeed in convincing the other folks. So basically, all the applications out there that were written, they could use anything from the platform. And the modification is not even the worst thing. I mean, they could just use anything. And if you use anything, there is a high probability that something will change with the next upgrade. And this is the reason why today we are in such a mess. On the other hand, if we would have waited until we would have defined a public API that stays stable for a long time, then maybe we would not have been that successful. So this is how I try to make it positive in the end. But as somebody who has written software, I really don't like this this image of anybody being able to call anything in your code. That's horrible.
Yeah, that it's funny that you mentioned that, because it brings back some memories of when I was first actually getting into the ABAP editor and my former company and first learning ABAP, and I was seeing that I could just access these tables straight away and call these function modules and feed it information, and it just does all this stuff. And I was like, really? I can just call all this stuff and nobody's going to say anything? And it was a little strange, but with Embedded Steampunk, from what Boris said, it sounds like I can't just go in there and do select from Mara or Mark or anything like that. I'll get an error, right? So I have to go through these, instead of going, hitting up Mark or Mara, I have to go to the CDS view that is exposed, correct?
Exactly. And the good thing is, it's not that you switch something on and then you get 1 trillion errors and have to fix them, because you can do it on ABAP object level. So you can start with a class and refactor that, or you can create a new one and switch this compiler switch on. I think this is a good thing, because then you can over time move closer and closer to a really clean call.
Another
my
question.
impression is that customers really like that. So what I've heard so far, that's exactly the right thing to do.
Yep. Another question. Does the Embedded Steampunk use regular transports?
Boris, that's for you.
Yeah. So first of all, Embedded Steampunk is more about that you only can use the APIs. You have a cloud-ready ABAP language, and technologies are restricted. You can't do a code screen or something like that. So, and you have to use the programming model of web. But the other stuff which the ADT tools, ABAP test cockpit, transporting, debugging, all that stuff is available as you know it. So there's no difference. We have a little different transport mechanism in Steampunk BTP. You know that we use GCTS and Git and that stuff here. In the S/4HANA world, we have still, so we go there for 3-system landscape and for transports in the classic way, let's say it like that. But from the principal features which we have concerning lifecycle management, there's no change.
Okay. We might have already touched on this, but back to our list of questions here. What is the difference between Steampunk and Embedded Steampunk for an ABAP developer?
So the major difference, if you are already on Steampunk BTP and you're already developing code there, then Embedded Steampunk will feel absolutely identical. There's only one difference. If you want to access S4 data, or if you want to do something in S4, then you do not call remote APIs in Embedded Steampunk, but you use local APIs. So you do a select to retrieve data and do not call a data service, or you call a web facades to create a sales order and do not call a remote API. That's the main difference, I would say, for an ABAP developer. If I compare Steampunk BTP, which is a side-by-side possibility to build extension, and Embedded Steampunk, which is used for tightly coupled extensions if you want to build something directly in the S/4HANA stack.
Okay. With every ABAP session that we do, ABAP related session, we have the obligatory question around, is there any plans to change from Eclipse to Visual Code? Let's do a collective no in this case and just put this one to bed. So guys?
No.
Okay, that's it. That's all we're going to say on that. Okay, next one. Seriously though, no. I mean,
there's good reasons for that. I mean,
yeah.
Part of the entire thing that we do is trying to make it as easy as possible for our classic legacy customers to move into the new world, into the cloud. And so we very carefully discuss whether we stick to this technology or whether we add something new. And you wouldn't believe how many of our customers still want SE80. I mean, we even have the discussions inside the company. There are these people, they just love it, and for them, Eclipse is the brand new later stuff. And of course, we could start now with a new development environment, but the thing is, all these features that we offer there, they are so powerful, and it's simply not feasible to always just offer the latest and greatest stuff, because then customers will never follow. So I would be happy if all our customers and all the SAP employees would be using Eclipse today. And it was a long time until we caught up with all the features that we offer there. And now starting something new, which has a high probability that in 3 years something else will come up, is probably not the right strategy for our ABAP-minded folks. But we've been discussing this forever. But in short, no.
So what changes can an ABAP developer expect with Steampunk or embedded Steampunk compared to classic custom ABAP code?
I think we touched most of the points already. So classic custom ABAP code allowed you to do modifications of SAP code, no longer allowed. Classic custom code allowed you to use whatever SAP object you want, doing a select on database table changes in the content of database tables. You could do what you want, more or less. That's more or less no longer possible. Then the ABAP languages restricted. So especially statements which allow you to access the operating system or the file system directly are no longer allowed, because that would harm our operation. Additionally, we restrict ourselves to the new technologies. So for example, cloud-ready technologies, let's say it like that. So we want to go for web-based applications with web, no longer DynPros. So Cold Screen will bring a syntax error as an example. So it's really the modern ABAP which you do in Steampunk or in embedded Steampunk with the new tools, no SE80, but ABAP development tools, with the new programming model, and with a clear access to public APIs instead of using whatever is possible. And we do not, and we do this not to more or less make you angry, but to ensure that the next upgrade will be smoother. That's the idea. And in the cloud, I think there's no debate that's clear. If you have automated updates, then there's no way around that we have to separate the extensions and the SAP code. We can't do customer-specific upgrade projects with cloud customers if you do this for thousands of tenants during one weekend. I think that's clear. And therefore, in the cloud, it's an absolute must to do that. And we reuse it on premise and in the other editions to make it easier for customers concerning their upgrade projects. And there, it is an offer. You can go on with the classic custom code as explained. It's an offer.
All right. So, guys, we have Steampunk. We have embedded Steampunk. We have key user extensibility, right? So do we need all of these, or do they complement one another, or does one win out over another? When do I use which to do what?
First of all, there will be guidance, and we're working on that. My point of view, we will not take anything away, and it definitely makes sense to offer these side-by-side scenarios on business technology platform for loosely coupled stuff, to offer this key user extensibility where you can do adaptations in a small range, not on developer level, and to offer something where you really on developer level can extend your solution in S4 using local APIs and doing stuff that is upgrade stable. So I think we have partners that are building SaaS solutions for a number of their clients. They are using the multi-tenancy concepts on the Steampunk business technology platform offering. And we will have partners that help our customers to extend their solutions and offer their stuff on S/4HANA Cloud or S/4 on-prem or private cloud. So I think there's good reasons for all the offerings we have. There will be no replacements. Or what do you say, Boris?
Absolutely. So what we do is we enrich with Embedded Steampunk our cloud-ready extensibility portfolio. That's what we are doing. We had really an issue that for tightly coupled extensions, we had only the key user low-code, no-code tool offering. So if you really have the need for a development project for a tightly coupled extension, which can't run side by side, then there was a gap in the cloud. And that is now closed by Embedded Steampunk. So Embedded Steampunk will not compete with any of those offerings. Now we have a really nice portfolio to extend our solutions in a cloud-ready and upgrade-stable way. And by the way, partners often even combine those. So they have their actual application sitting on BTP, and they use Embedded Steampunk as an example to build an adapter, because they have to implement a body in the S4 stack, provide an additional custom remote API, which they need for their application on BTP because it's not available or not provided by SAP. So we will often see a combination of the different extensibility options.
So for the public cloud, I think everyone understands the benefit of Embedded Steampunk and the other cloud extensibility options. But why should we care about Embedded Steampunk in an on-premise scenario?
From my point of view, because it's a great opportunity to move to a state where you don't run into any hiccups anymore with the next SAP platform upgrade. That's the main reason. This is this clean core thing. So in the on-prem world, we already have the opportunity for developers to do anything they want. Actually, we have too many opportunities because, as we said, they can call any SAP object and even modify the code. I heard this is an S4 thing, but it's not recommended, but it's still possible, even in the private cloud, to call any SAP object. So with Embedded Steampunk, customers, if they are willing to take the next step, they can make their core a lot cleaner and at the same time prepare for the cloud. Because in the cloud, of course, you can't modify the SAP code or use any object there because you're a part of a huge landscape that is upgraded at once for all the customers and so on. So there's no individual upgrading anymore.
Just looking back through the chat real quick to see if there's anything that I missed that won't come up. So here's a question. I'm not sure I completely understand it. It totally makes sense to use Embedded Steampunk and keep the core clean, but won't this be a massive overhead for ABAP developers for no real benefit?
Well, I don't think so, since maybe Boris is the better. I just start answering. First of all, it's an option. So you don't have to do anything. You can leave everything as is. And if you're happy with the SAP upgrades and there are no hiccups, then there is no reason to do anything. If you want to, you can re-implement your entire code, making it really clean. And if you want to, you can do this step by step and SAP object by SAP object. And if we're talking about this public S4 business API that will grow over time and on-prem as well, if there is something not available, you can even write a small wrapper then that is still sort of working with the compiler switch classic mode. And then you can write the core part of your solution with compiler switch cloud ready and just use the public API. So from our point of view, this is a great opportunity to move over time into a cleaner and better state and prepare for the cloud. But maybe I didn't get the question right. I don't know.
From my point of view, in the public cloud, there's no discussion. It's a must. So therefore, we don't have to discuss it. And in the other editions, I think the benefit will get clearer and clearer when we have more and more APIs. be brutally honest, perhaps it was not always easy on-premise to find the correct API which you shall use, or which of the where you should do a modification. Now you get the bodies, you get the APIs which are recommended, which will be kept stable and so on. So you have a clear interface how to interact with your S4 system in your extension. Therefore, that will help ABAP developers to do more or less it correctly in the S4HANA stack concerning the extension. Additionally, the upgrades are more stable. Therefore, from my point of view, the benefit for ABAP developers will be get more and more obvious if the API coverage increases. But from my point of view, if I see what customers, what kind of customer requests I get into my inbox, I get a lot of customer requests from on-premise customers, from S4HANA on-premise customers who want to follow a clean core principle because perhaps they haven't made the best experience in their classic ECC system. If everything is interwoven, if all the extensions and everything is more or less interwoven, and it's really hard to get innovations in or to do the next SAP upgrade. So from my point of view, there's really some pressure even on premise to get more to a clean core stack. And with Embedded Steampunk and with BTP and with key user extensibility, I think we have now a portfolio which allows to do that step by step. There's no dreaming that we have a big switch and then all your extensions are somehow in a clean core mode. This will be a process, but as for each and every process, you have to start at some time. And from our point of view, next year is a good starting point.
That was a call for action.
Yeah, that's what it sounded like. Another question from the chat. You mentioned that you can switch Embedded Steampunk on at the Z program level. How can it be enforced globally so that all new development from a specific date is done using Embedded Steampunk?
That's a very good question because it shows already that we need some kind of guidance and tools how to organize that kind of development in, for example, an on-premise system. That's exactly what we are currently building, and a guideline how to organize that. So, for example, we think about software components. We have a software component where you have your classic old stuff, where you work with the classic version of the ABAP language. And all the classic stuff is in there. And we have another software component with the new stuff. And here you enable the compiler switch so that the strict cloud checks are running. And then the default is that all objects which are created in the new software component will then be automatically in this new mode, in this strict mode. But exactly that's what we are doing currently, building a guideline and to assist customers how to implement such a mixture of classic custom code, which is still there and will not vanish magically, and the new stuff into a realistic on-premise system. Hopefully, we'll get this guideline ready until end of the year. That's the plan, at least.
Well, I suppose we should have that if we had the call to action to start.
Absolutely. Otherwise, right? It's yes, a call for action for me.
Right.
Yeah.
So when will Embedded Steampunk be available? And a follow-up question, is there any additional licensing costs associated with Embedded Steampunk?
So Embedded Steampunk is first available in S4HANA Cloud, if in early adopter mode. We have seen that in the blog post of Harald as well. So first customers are using that as early adopters. And then the first APIs will be built or are built currently for S4HANA Cloud, and those will then be available via the on-premise shipment next year, so that the first set of APIs is available. From a technology perspective, even today, the switch on set program level can be seen on premise system for code-based objects, for classes, and so on. So there you can see the switch Unicode or standard ABAP or cloud-enabled ABAP in your IDE. But that's only available for code-based objects at the moment, not for DDIC objects and so on. Therefore, we have to do some technology enhancements as well, and that's why we do this more or less for next year. And additionally, of course, the APIs must be available. So that's when it is available. When Concerning licensing, that's not really my topic. I'm not aware. I think it's about on-premise, I think, because for subscription, I'm not sure if that's the question here. I'm not aware about additional cost, but I'm not the expert in this area.
I'm not either, since this is more a question to the S4 folks.
Exactly.
Okay. Just going back through the chat here, there's one question in here that's kind of associated with one of my follow-up questions here. Lars says, I guess he's referring to Carl. Carl Kessler linked to a few embedded steampunk tutorials. The screenshot shows 1,000 objects released for the MM module. Any ballpark guess about how many objects will be released towards S4? And my follow-up question is, and I guess it's kind of a no-brainer, is that will SAP continue to release more and more objects in different modules over time?
That's a good question.
Of course. So the complete embedded steampunk story can only fly if we release more and more APIs. And it's not only about APIs, it's about bodies as well. So the extension points, because you're no longer allowed to modify the code, so there must be a substitute, of course. But of course, especially in the cloud, we standardize. So not each and every modification will find a replacement by a body, to make this clear. But as explained, the scope which we try to cover with APIs and bodies is the S/4HANA Cloud scope. So don't expect that you now get for each of the on-premise only modules your API. So really we focus on the core ERP S/4HANA Cloud scope. And here, and I can really say that, the S4 colleagues are heavily investing to build these APIs and the extension points. Plus, they provide an on-demand process for now for the first early adopter customers and partners, so that missing APIs or extension points can be quickly provided. So it's really a focus topic in this area.
So another question that came in the chat while you were speaking there, APIs for which modules? I would say probably all the modules, yeah?
All the modules which are part of the S/4HANA Cloud scope. That's the main. So you can expect the standard stuff like finance, procure, produce. So these standard modules shall be covered. And of course, the number of APIs will be increased step by step. And the same is true for for reading stuff via CDS views, web facades for create, update, delete, and bodies to extend the S/4HANA processes. And in the ABAP platform, we provide mainly classes for the technical stuff.
Okay. I guess this one's for me, since I've had some experience with it. Are there any plans for additional developer experience type enhancements around embedded steampunk, particularly around the body implementation flow in ABAP development tools? I found that the clicks in the IDE could have been more streamlined. Do we have any plans to help that?
The good thing is that flows like that now are more or less in the middle of interest, or of high interest now, because embedded steampunk is a very high priority topic. And I tried it out myself, and I thought that a lot of clicks are necessary, as explained. Therefore, this flow, as an example, will be optimized. I'm not sure if this will make the world run better, but it's of course one of the stuff which is really essential part of embedded steampunk, and that's why we will invest so that the developer efficiency when implementing a body gets even better. But perhaps even more essential is another point: how to find the APIs. So since you can't use everything, and perhaps you have the knowledge, okay, I know in the former times I execute a select on Mara, what shall I do now? Therefore, currently we invest, okay, how can we provide hints or quick fixes? If you write select Mara, please use iProduct, the CDS view, or a mapping table. In former times you used that BAPI, now you use that web facade to create a sales order. So that's perhaps an even more important topic to invest, that customers find and easily can consume the APIs.
So as an ABAP developer, where can I go to learn more about Steampunk and Embedded Steampunk?
So I think we provide already in the landing page in the community section for Steampunk, which I think you posted that already perhaps. And additionally, Carl provided a sneak preview concerning the first tutorials on Embedded Steampunk, which are, of course, now only usable by our early adopter customers. As soon as Embedded Steampunk reached general availability with the S/4HANA Cloud, then we will provide more information with the same community pages and so on for Embedded Steampunk as well. And of course, it will be covered at TechEd this year.
Another question that came in, will there be any migration tools that can identify code that be more easily moved into Embedded Steampunk?
Very good question, because I forgot that we provide ABAP test cockpit checks as well, covering more or less what the syntax check will show if you switch the compiler switch to strict cloud checking. That means you can run the ABAP test cockpit checks over your code, over your set code, and then you see what will happen if you do the compiler switch. So which kind of syntax errors will you see? And that will give you already an indication how difficult it will be or hard to transform it. That's a first hint. If you have a Dynpro-based application, then it might be hard to transform this to web, perhaps harder than exchanging the APIs, to be honest. Yeah? So it really depends on the application which you want to transform.
That's another good point. When we talk about Steampunk and Embedded Steampunk, neither supports legacy ABAP objects such as Web Dynpro, list reports, and things like that. So the programming model here is of course RAP, yes?
Exactly.
Yep.
It's really like we have that in BTP. So if you have experience with Steampunk on BTP, where we do not allow Dynpros, Web Dynpro, but you build web services or you build web-based Fiori applications, the same is true for Embedded Steampunk. It's really identical. We really reuse the programming model in Steampunk now in Embedded Steampunk.
All right, fantastic, guys. We're just about out of time. I'm going to leave the last couple minutes for some final thoughts from your side.
I was not prepared for final thoughts, but I can tell you that after 32 years of SAP, there have been few projects that were as interesting and promising, from my point of view at least, than that. So I've told you before we started this interview that back in, I don't know, when was that, 96 or 97? No, I think it was 99. We did this R3 on Linux thing, and I became a sort of evangelist for open source and Linux. That was good fun too. But ever since then, this Steampunk thing is really great, and this totally motivates me. And I would hope that you guys out there would make use of it and tell us if we are wrong with our thoughts or with the story that we told you here, and so that we can adapt it. And of course, things change over time. So as I've said, we've started with platform as a service on BTP, because that we thought was a great offering for ABAP-minded customers to not only be able to use Node.js and Java, but ABAP as well. And now we have Embedded Steampunk with a totally different motivation. And now we are even doing on-prem and private cloud with a motivation to make the core cleaner. That's great. And if you have ideas, tell us, please. We are listening. That would be my final words.
It's hard to add something to that. So from my point of view, with Steampunk, with BTP and the ABAP environment, Steampunk, Embedded Steampunk, and key user tools, we have now really everything in our hands concerning extensibility in the cloud. And I think it's an absolute good idea to reuse that on-premise. In on-premise, it's clear that will be a long journey. There's no doubt about that. And we have to figure out with the first customers using it, how to do a good balance between the custom code, which we have already, classic custom ABAP code, the new variants, in order to make this nice for the ABAP developers, but nice during the upgrade as well. That will be a journey. There's no doubt about that. But since we transform to the cloud, and since more and more customers want to follow that journey, I think it's clear that that's the path we want to follow.
All right. Harald, Boris, always a pleasure, gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you to the viewers for joining, and thanks for the questions. And we'll see you next time. Take care, everybody.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, goodbye. Thanks a lot, folks.
Bye-bye.